Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to today's explainer. We are going on a really fascinating journey today through the evolution of a framework that started off as just a simple, lightweight B4J web API template and has completely transformed itself into this massive modular web development ecosystem. If you're a developer looking for an efficient server-side framework that literally just makes sense, the story of Pakai Server is going to be incredibly insightful for you. To really get a sense of how powerful this toolset has become, here is our roadmap for today. First, an ambitious web framework. Second, the evolution of Pakai Server. Third, core routing and API tools. Fourth, data and UI render libraries. And finally, number 5, the complete ecosystem today.
So let's kick things off with Section 1, an ambitious web framework and the vision behind it all.
I found this quote from the framework's creator, Eric, just incredibly telling. He states these tools were, quote, created in the hope to empower developers' experience and cut development time. And that really seems to be the golden rule here. It's all about avoiding those massive, bloated monoliths and just loading exactly what your project needs so you can get off the ground fast. So what exactly are we looking at here? Well, by definition, Pakai Server is a modular framework and a starter template for creating full-stack web apps, or REST API backends, in B4J. And what really stood out to me as a super cool design choice is its versatility. You can run this as a full-stack app, an API-only backend for mobile devices, or strictly as a web-only application. It entirely depends on what your specific project actually needs.
All right, moving into Section 2, the evolution of Pakai Server, from version 3 up to version 6.
Looking at the chronology, it is honestly amazing how much this has transformed over time. Version 3 started its life simply known as the Web API Server. It was this extremely fast Jetty-based API server returning JSON and XML. Fast forward to version 4, and it gets officially rebranded as Pakai Server. Then version 5 was a major turning point. That's when they introduced the EndsMeet library for global routing and configurations. And then we arrive at version 699, which completely shook up the UI approach by integrating HTMX and server-side HTML generation for a true, robust, full-stack experience. And this brilliantly illustrates the major architectural shift that took place. Back in versions 3 and 4, if you were building a web app, you were relying really heavily on client-side rendering, right? You were writing lots of custom JavaScript and jQuery just to parse JSON APIs on the browser, but version 6 totally flips the script. It moves away from heavy client-side scripting and instead leverages server-side HTML generation. It uses HTMX to dynamically swap HTML fragments right over the wire. It's cleaner, it's way faster, and it keeps the developer strictly inside their B4J comfort zone. Now, if you're wondering just how efficient this new architecture actually is, look at this number, 18. During the version 6 development cycle, an optimized version of the starter template, fully stripped of unnecessary web assets, was reduced down to just 18 kilobytes. I mean, in modern web development, that is shockingly tiny. It just proves you absolutely do not need megabytes of bloated boilerplate code to get a professional server running. Okay, Section 3, Core Routing and API Tools. Let's look under the hood at the engine. The very first crucial component we run into here is the EndsMeet library. Introduced heavily in version 5 to extend the base B4J server functionality, it basically acts as the global traffic cop for your app. It handles your API settings, manages automatic HTTP to HTTPS redirects, and it deals with those always frustrating CORS issues that we all love to hate. But honestly, its best feature? It manages routing by reading from an external INI configuration file. That means you can add new API endpoints or change routing rules on a live production server without ever needing to recompile your Java jar file. Huge time saver. Now, running right alongside EndsMeet is the WebApiUtils library. If EndsMeet is the traffic cop, WebApiUtils is the powerhouse workhorse handling the actual payload. It manages complex request and response handling, ensures secure cookie management, and provides vital CSRF protection. Whether you need to parse a simple JSON payload, handle multi-part form data for file uploads, or extract basic auth and bearer tokens from headers, this single library does literally all the heavy lifting for you. But WebApiUtils actually has this amazing secret weapon built right into it, the help handler. Let's be totally honest. Writing API documentation is usually a developer's absolute least favorite chore. Well, Help Handler magically generates a fully interactive OpenAPI 3.0 specification for you. You just navigate to the /help endpoint and boom, you get this beautifully formatted Swagger UI console. You can test your endpoints directly from the browser, and it even generates ready-to-use B4X client code snippets. It is an absolute game changer for developer experience. Which brings us to Section 4, Data and UI Render Libraries. Basically, the specialized team.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the flexibility you get for data storage. If your app requires traditional relational databases, you just plug in MiniORMUtils for seamless CRUD operations on SQLite, MySQL, and MariaDB. But let's say you want to skip the overhead of SQL entirely for a more lightweight project. You can just swap it out for minimalist utils. It's this brilliant, database-free approach that provides full CRUD functionality using simple in-memory lists backed by a local key-value store.
And when it comes to the user interface, Pakai version 6 takes a radically different approach than traditional setups. Normally, you'd find yourself context switching constantly, right? You're jumping out of your backend code to write HTML in an external editor, then wiring it all up with manual JavaScript. Pakai totally solves this with its mini libraries, Mini HTML, Mini CSS, and Mini JS. These basically act as a domain-specific language, or a DSL, allowing you to build and generate all your HTML, CSS, and JS entirely inside the B4J IDE using native B4X code.
So the really crucial point here is how this generated code actually interacts with the browser. Instead of writing custom AJAX calls for every single button click, the version 6 UI stack relies on HTMX. HTMX allows your buttons and forms to issue server requests and swap out specific HTML fragments dynamically without ever doing a full page reload. And this is perfectly paired with Alpine JS for lightweight client-side reactivity, like toggling modals, and Bootstrap 5 for a beautifully responsive, modern design right out of the box. You get that smooth, single-page application feel without the massive JavaScript fatigue. All right, Section 5, the complete ecosystem today. Let's put it all together. This is where you really see the true beauty of this modular architecture in action. EndsMeet handles your global traffic, WebApiUtils processes your REST payloads, MiniORMUtils manages the database, and MiniHTML renders the front end. Because they're all decoupled, you literally only use what you need. Are you building a headless API? Just drop the MiniHTML library entirely. You can mix and match these building blocks to perfectly fit the exact requirements of your specific project. And the ecosystem, it doesn't just stop with those core libraries. Because of this open modular design, it continues to expand with specialized extensions. For example, there are add-ons like Pakai Lanyard and Pakai Vest for enhanced utility. And notably, there's Pakai Watch, which seamlessly plugs right into the server to act as a rate-limiting filter, protecting your endpoints from spam and abuse. So the framework naturally scales up with your application's complexity. So let's move to and see how this builds in actual practice for a developer. Initiating this massive ecosystem is almost shockingly simple. Step 1, select the Pakai server template in your B4J IDE. Step 2, check the boxes for the modules you want in the built-in library manager. Step 3, add the help handler class. Instantly, your server is running with auto-generated docs. It literally cuts the initial project setup time from hours down to just minutes. Which brings us to the end of our journey through the evolution of the Pakai ecosystem. From a simple API template to a highly optimized modular framework utilizing HTMX and server-side rendering, it has fundamentally streamlined how B4J developers build for the web. So, my question to you is, how will you leverage this modular building block approach to cut development time and reduce friction on your next full-stack web application? Think about it. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and happy coding!